So, you may have seen the news this week that another American was arrested in Russia. Well, actually, I know some of you definitely have seen this news because I got a few emails asking me about it, particularly in light of recent prison exchanges. Some people seem to be worried that if they visit Russia, they'll be arrested so they can then be swapped for a Russian sat in jail in the US. I totally understand. I totally understand this fear. And actually, the US State Department itself warns US citizens about it, saying that there is and this is a quote, a continued risk of wrongful detention of US nationals by Russian authorities. The website also says that, and I'm quoting, Russian security services have arrested US citizens on false charges and denied them fair treatment and convicted them without credible evidence. That's a quote, like I said, from the US State Department. So let's talk about it a little bit. So it's my personal opinion that traveling to Russia as an American or as a Westerner in general is safe. I say this because I know many other Westerners who live, work, and study here without any problem, including Americans. However, I also knew one American, not particularly well, but we'd talked a few times, who was living here and who was arrested in 2023 and was sentenced to jail for 16 years. So I'm not ignorant of the actual risks. Actually, I'm going to start off this video now with my conclusion, and then after I'll get into the weeds a little bit. So, in general, in my opinion, like I said, it is safe to visit Russia. You're highly unlikely to get arrested arbitrarily, although it is possible. However, if you commit an actual crime, you will be severely punished and you could receive a sentence that is magnitudes more severe than you would expect to receive in your home country. Let's start off with the obvious elephant in the room in these cases, and that is drugs. In recent years, the highest profile American to be arrested in Russia was the professional basketball player Brittany Griner, who was detained on smuggling charges after bringing medically prescribed hash oil into the country, into Russia. Cannabis in all of its forms is neither legal for recreational nor medical use in Russia, so she broke the law. And because she was caught bringing it into the country, not just being in possession of it, the charge was actually smuggling, not just possession. So in this case, there is no doubt she actually did something illegal. However, I personally believe, in my personal opinion, is that her sentence of 9 years behind bars for just 0.7 grams was incredibly harsh. Another person who got caught with drugs is the most recent person to be swapped to the US. It's a guy called Mark Fogel. Fogel was an English teacher. Well, he was a teacher at the Anglo-American school in Moscow, which is an English school. He wasn't necessarily an English teacher. And he was caught entering Russia with 17 grams of weed for medical purposes. The substance had been prescribed to him in the US to treat his chronic pain. However, like in the Griner case, he did break the law. There's no doubt about that. And he was sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was swapped actually just this month after serving just over 3 years. And actually the guy who was in the news most recently, the most recent American to be detained in the US, had a similar story last week, or I think it's 2 weeks now. A 28-year-old called Caleb Byers from Ohio was arrested on drug smuggling charges after bringing cannabis, or cannabis-laced gummies it actually was, on a flight into Russia. His mother told the media that he is a severe epileptic and he took these gummies as seizure medications. But luckily for him, his detention came during a time when Putin is trying to improve relations with Washington, D.C., so he ended up being released immediately and deported back to the US. So, as far as I can tell, all three of these Americans admitted at least some partial guilt. There's no accusation that the drugs were planted or anything like that, which is what people seem to be afraid of. These three examples help me to say something that I think is very obvious, but apparently it's not. Russians and Americans have a very different relationship with drugs, especially weed, which is legal in so much of the US and is not legal at all here. So if you're going to come to Russia, absolutely do not bring any drugs with you. Not at all. Not even a single trace should be on you. You will be arrested, you will be detained, and you will get a very long time in prison. And there's a chance that you may get very little sympathy since you actually did break a law. You'll be relying on diplomatic efforts to get you released, which might never happen. Of course, at the moment, everything is so unpredictable. The second most common reason that Westerners get arrested in Russia is accusations of espionage. Now, this is a lot murkier to talk about because the truth is that it's impossible for us to know as civilians who was really a spy, who was not a spy, but Russia legitimately thought was a spy. And the third category, of course, total non-spies. It was a total put-up job. In fact, I'm personally sure that some people that were arrested for espionage were just journalists, but they'd gotten their hands on sensitive material that was perhaps illegal to obtain, illegal for them to have. So that's why they were treated as spies, even if they weren't really in the definition of what anyone would say is a spy. So it's quite hard for me to give advice on this, but I'll give you some obvious tips. Number one, don't hang out where you're not meant to be. Don't take pictures of things you're not meant to take photos of. That's mainly military. I think that should be obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. And then perhaps a less obvious of a tip, don't lie about who you are. I know so many expats, very often American, sometimes British, who tell lies about who they are and what they do and what they did. And sometimes it's because they want to sound more impressive than they really are. I'm sure anyone who has been in a British or an American expat community knows these types. They're often known as LBH, loser back home. And they just create more problems for themselves. So just be yourself. Don't pretend to be something you're not, and you won't get any undue attention. Or you probably won't. That's my next tip. So now I've touched on those two topics, espionage and drugs. I want to go over 5 or 6 cases of Americans currently behind bars in Russia, hopefully to enlighten us a little bit. And so the first thing I want to mention are, no surprise, 2 drug-related cases that are currently ongoing. In July last year, 2 Americans were jailed, actually. The first one I want to talk about is a man called Michael Leake, who was sentenced to 13 years in prison for selling drugs. And another one is called Robert Woodland, who was given 12 and a half years, so a similar length of time, for he was arrested when he, as far as I remember, when he was allegedly dropping off drugs into like a safe cache. And it's not clear based on the reporting I've read whether Leak admitted his guilt, so I can't really comment on that. But I know Woodland's lawyer said he pleaded guilty to part of the accusations. So that's 2 more drug cases. But of course, there are other things that Americans have been jailed for and the cases that are still ongoing. So last year, a man called Robert Gilman was found guilty of attacking a policeman while drunk. Gilman actually pleaded guilty. And that's similar to another case of a man called Joseph Tater, who is alleged to have assaulted a police officer. They're in different cities, they're not both in Moscow. Tater pleaded not guilty and then told the Russian court that he was being hunted by the CIA, and he alleged the CIA killed his mother, and he denounced his US citizenship in Russian court, and he asked US embassy staff and American journalists to leave the court. So it's quite a strange story. There is another category of cases that seem to be the next common after drugs and after espionage, and that is family or personal disputes. In September last year, a man called Daniel Schneider, an American, was sentenced to 6 years behind bars for allegedly kidnapping his son after trying to take him abroad. His son is a Russian citizen, and the court was told that he was caught when he was trying to cross the Russian border into Poland through a forest, through a forest swamp. So he's in jail. Another American, a man called Gordon Black, who is in the US Army, was arrested last year for allegedly stealing money from his Russian girlfriend and then making threats to kill her. Black admitted he was guilty of taking the money. He denied threatening to kill her, but yeah, he's currently in jail in Vladivostok. There's another category of case, which is the detention of people who are joint citizens of America and Russia. I'm not going to touch them in this video because they're generally considered to be simply Russian. When you're a foreign citizen with dual citizenship of Russia, once you're in Russian territory in Russia, the Russian courts just treat you as a Russian citizen. In fact, it's important to note that, if you one day you do get Russian citizenship here, while you're here, the government, the courts, everyone, they don't care about your other passports. In the eyes of the court, once you're a Russian citizen, that's it. And you could even be refused consular help from your first citizenship because you're a Russian citizen. So the American consulate or the embassy might not even help you because you have a Russian passport. So now I've told you about some cases, I want to point out again, after all of this, that these are exceptions. There are far more foreigners, including Westerners, including Americans who live great lives here, far away from any problems with the law. So, on balance, I would say, in my opinion, my personal opinion, is that it is safe here. But if you're worried, that's probably a sign that it's not for you, and you should just not come. You don't want to live with that sort of worry every day. But if you do want to come, please follow the law. I know it's obvious, but please follow the law. Please be sensible. Please don't bring any drugs, even if they're legal in your country. This is not your country. This is a different country with different laws, different rules. Please follow the laws here. Avoid taking photos of sensitive sites. Avoid restricted areas. Be mindful of personal disputes, especially involving Russian citizens. I know these things are obvious, but I need to tell people. It is safe, but it's not totally 100% foolproof. Well, that's it from this part of the video. Now, if you have any questions, let's go to the live stream. All right. So, I should mention a couple of things before I start. I'm not at home, obviously. This is a hotel room. I'm not in Moscow at the moment. And I want to talk about the video. I filmed that video 2 weeks ago, I believe. So the information in the video, it's good, it's current, but at any point when I said this week or this month, note that like most of that, I said it in February. So the most recent case was at the end of February, and the prisoner exchange was in February. And I haven't heard of any extra cases of Americans being arrested in March, although it's possible that they weren't, but it's unlikely. Given the current political situation, anytime an American gets arrested in Russia, it's normally in the Russian news 2 or 3 days later, and then it's in international news, especially after the American embassy has been contacted. And it's the same for any Westerner, really. But yeah, I wanted to make that video. I made it, yeah, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, because I'm constantly getting messages from people, normally emails, people from the US who say they would love to come to Russia. They dream of coming to Russia, but they're scared that they're just going to get arrested and then they're going to be in prison and there's nothing they can do about it. And that's why I always say, look, it's, of course, that's not impossible. But I know so many Brits, Americans, people from all over the world who live here in Russia. They've been here for years and years and years, and they've never had any trouble with the law. So if you follow the law, if you're a law-abiding person, there's almost no chance you're going to run into problems with the authorities. Like I said, it's not impossible, but it's just so unlikely on the balance of probabilities. So that's why I wanted to make that video, because I get asked so often about it. And that, yeah, like in my personal case, I've been here for 8 years. I've had no legal problems, and that's because I've never trafficked drugs. I don't do drugs. I make sure I follow the rules, migration rules, rules about registration, and all these things that are annoying but are absolutely necessary to if you're a foreign citizen living here in Russia. And yeah, because of that, I'm fine. So yeah, that's why I made that video, and I hope so many of you found it useful. So the reason I decided to do this live stream is hopefully there'll be some follow-up questions. Although, of course, in Moscow, it's quite late now. But hopefully this might be a better time for some American viewers, or even in England, it's not so late. So I'm going to go through some of the questions I've seen come up, and hopefully if you have any, drop them in the chat. I'll do my best to give you my expertise about living life as a foreigner in Russia and following the law. All right. So, interesting question from Nikolai. Is it so hard for Americans to stop taking drugs? I've never been a drug taker, so it's not something that has ever bothered me. But it's not just Americans. I know the UK has a problem with drugs. It just seems to be it's the Americans who decide that they're going to take it with them to other countries, especially marijuana, because it's the law in the US in so many places is so well, it's been decriminalized, it's been regulated, you can buy it legally from shops. So they see the world through their own prism of what they know. They don't think other countries might be different. Whereas if you're from the UK, you know everything's illegal in the UK, so it's most likely going to be illegal abroad. And if you want to do drugs, you go to, I don't know, people go to the Netherlands, for example, but they would never take their own. But yeah, I don't know why. I'm not an American, but it is a very common feature, very, very common feature of the Americans who get arrested in Russia. It's because of drugs. All right, so there's a lot of questions coming in, mainly from the same person, but I'm gonna go through them. Why not? So this is someone I don't recognize. Visitor game. What are the best places to live in Russia? So, in my personal opinion, Moscow is by far number one. Um, in terms of a big city that's got everything you're ever going to need, you can't beat Moscow. It's like living in any other big international city, a London or a New York or Paris, something like that. But then it also has the downsides that a big city like that has. So if you prefer, I don't know, you want to live in the countryside, then obviously Moscow's not for you. Just for me, I really like the hustle and bustle, the fact that in Moscow it's impossible to be bored. There's so much to do. There's lots of people to meet. It's it makes absolute sense for me as someone who likes to socialize to live here. If that's not what you're looking for, then look somewhere else. The thing is, I've traveled all around Russia, but I've never really lived anywhere apart from Moscow. I went to St. Petersburg as an exchange student a very long time ago, so I spent 6 months living there, and I visit very often. But no, Moscow is really number one for me. I'm probably the wrong person to ask about other things like that. Yeah, so there's a comment here about that they arrested Bold and Bankrupt. It's so I don't believe he did anything wrong. But look, if you're going to walk around speaking to a camera, you're going to get in problems. But I think that his case was to do with something that was found on his phone, right? So these are things you can prepare for. You can be sensible about. For example, there's absolutely nothing on my phone that would cause any alarm for the authorities, but nevertheless, when I'm going through passport control, I always make sure that it's fine. It's just like it's just common sense. You have to just prepare, especially if you're British, if you're American, if you're from one of the countries on this list. You can find it online of unfriendly countries. You just have to be well prepared. Probably, if you're going to film yourself speaking to camera in sensitive areas, then you might get arrested. Yeah, it's possible. But for the average person, it's really the risk is so low. It's so low. All right. Yeah, there's a very good comment here. You should be definitely be careful about prescription pills as well. Like in every country, it's the same as I said before almost. People think that because they can get something over the counter, that it's going to be over the counter somewhere else. That's not necessarily true. You can buy there's some things you can buy over the counter in your country that in another country you have to get a prescription for. And if you don't, you could be in trouble. And it's same the other way around. It's just every country regulates their medical industry in a different way. So my advice would be don't bring any drugs. I know for some people, if you have disabilities or you have like really bad medical problems, then that obviously makes things prohibitive. And do some more research, please, on the drugs you're going to bring. But don't bring anything like medical marijuana. That just doesn't make sense, really. Have you got a comment from someone who says it's from personal experience? Some prescribed meds you have may be completely illegal. Even if you have all the doctor's letters and scripts, you can still face charges. That's exactly what I was saying. You can legally have something in your own country prescribed by a doctor, but perhaps in Russia it's illegal to even prescribe. So you just have to be careful about this kind of thing, especially about medication, drugs. Definitely, like illegal drugs in your country, don't bring them. Illegal drugs here, don't bring them. Is stuff like this is very obvious, but prescribed stuff, it might be a little bit more complicated. And if you have to do your research before you cross the border. So this comment from Comrade, that's the one I was mentioning in the start of this video. Yeah, he brought
gummy bears or whatever they were with marijuana in them, apparently for a medical condition. I have no reason to believe he was lying about it being a medical condition, but nevertheless, you just can't bring that into Russia. You just can't. Don't do it. It's unless you want to be arrested. And that guy, he was very, very lucky that the current political situation is that Russia and the US are getting closer to try and like get an end to the war and everything. And with Putin and Trump trying to become closer, more cooperation, these kind of things are going to happen now. It's like a goodwill. But during Biden, stuff like this took years and years and years. And who knows, after maybe in 2 or 3 years, when it's not politically expedient anymore, you might be sat rotting in jail for 4, 5, 6 years until there's some political reason to trade you. I think it's honestly, I think it's too big of a risk. Just don't do it. Yeah, agreed here. Completely agree with you. Don't bring anything. Yeah, so a comment from Mike here that I'm going to read out. Ketamine was banned, for example, some time ago. In the USSR, it was legal, but then it was used extensively by addicts to make home brew drugs. So it was banned. I didn't know that, actually. That's interesting. But I don't think there's many countries where it is legal. So I don't think people are going to think, oh, it's legal in my country, so I'll take it to Russia. In this case, marijuana is the big one for this. But yeah, I'm going to keep saying it. If you don't know, don't do it. Just don't bring it. Don't bring anything. Yeah, thank you very much, John. Yeah, where are the likes? No, I really appreciate anyone coming to watch my videos. All right, from Roy. In the US, you can get a ticket just for a bottle of beer from another state. Yeah, I understand that in the US, the laws state by state can just like massively vary. So, if given that within one country laws can vary, why do you think you can go to another country and the laws will be the same as they are back home? So, if you don't want to get rotting in jail and having to wait for some sort of clemency or for some sort of prisoner swap, just don't do it. Yeah. So right now you can see I'm not in my home. I'm not in Moscow. I'm in a hotel room traveling. Be back in Moscow tomorrow. I just thought it'd be a good opportunity for me while I'm here using the hotel Wi-Fi to do a nice little live stream. Right. Here's another comment. Another blogger was deported because he filmed a railroad bridge in deep forest on China border. Had no documents with him at all. Yeah, so that's another thing that can get you in trouble in Russia is that there are certain areas that foreigners are not allowed in. Actually, there's certain areas that nobody's allowed in without a pass. But near the border, there's so many of those areas. You even have to, for example, if you cross a Russian border by car or on foot or by bus, before you get to the border, something like 5 kilometers before, they'll have a passport check, and they're very, very careful about who's going near the border area. So if you walk past one of those border checks, nobody checks your passport, you get found near the border taking photos of stuff, filming stuff, it's going to be trouble. That guy who was, you said he was deported, it sounds like to me like he was lucky to be deported. I mean, that's something that you can get locked up for a long time. It depends. All right, next comment from Anna. The guy is back in the US, isn't he? Yeah, he got traded almost immediately, I believe. Oh, even let go, not even traded, almost immediately. And that was at the time during, when Putin and Trump were first start talking. So everyone was wanting to create a nice friendly atmosphere between Americans and Russians. So that guy was lucky. He got arrested. Because of the political situation, he got released. You just can't rely on that. No, so Artyom asked if there's going to be a little video about my trip. No, there won't be a video about my trip. It's I'm actually here for. I'm actually not in Russia. I had to cross the border for immigration reasons, and I'll be back in a couple of days. But no, it's I'm not in Russia. Actually, while I talk about this, so something I mentioned a lot of the time in videos is that the border control at airports nowadays is a lot harder than it used to be. If you're from the US, the UK, unfriendly countries, of course, Ukraine, although their situation is a little bit different now because they're forced to go to one airport. They're forced to go to Sheremetyevo Airport in Moscow. They can't just fly to any airport they want to anymore. But if you're British or American, it was always very, very easy pre-2022. You could just basically walk there. You might ask a couple of questions. How long are you going to be here for? What's the purpose of your travel? Those kind of things. And then you got stamped right in. 2022, it all changed. Many people were, including myself, had to wait 6, 7, 8 hours to cross the border, which included a interrogation, which could be 45 minutes, an hour, with this wait either side until they decide to let you in. Now, I never heard of anyone not being let in. And the interrogation as such, it isn't difficult. They don't ask you difficult questions. But it made things last a lot longer. But fingers crossed, from my experience in the last 12 months or so, I haven't been asked a single question when leaving Russia, whereas in 2022 I was. And last time I re-entered the country, I didn't have any interrogation at all. I had which was great. I was totally shocked because I basically budgeted to have 4 or 5 hours just sat in the airport waiting. So yeah, so things have definitely gotten better for anyone thinking about coming to Russia. As long as you've got everything prepared, you've got the right papers and everything, and everything's perfectly fine nowadays. It seems. Although next time in a couple of days, and when I cross the border, I'll find out that I'm wrong and I'm going to be interviewed again. But it seems unlikely. Well, I missed this comment before. Another one from Artyom about drinking. Right, yeah. I mean, so this is just talking about the history of Russian drinking laws, and of course, Russian drinking laws are different to drinking laws in your home country. But in terms of like beer and stuff, it's basically any drink actually. It's perfectly fine here. There's no problem. The main real restrictions here in Russia are against the drugs you'd expect. So obviously that's not alcohol and it's not cigarettes. It's the sort of the classic drugs that have been illegal basically everywhere until recent movements in the last 10, 15 years to decriminalize certain drugs, especially marijuana. That's not happened here. I don't think it will happen here. So don't bring it with you. And I mean, I would also suggest don't buy it when you're here. Because one of the other things that Americans have been arrested for in Russia is buying buying drugs on the dark web. Like, so So this is back in the day. I haven't heard about many of cases. Some of the cases still happen, but it happened a lot, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that people would go online, order drugs on the dark web, and they go to like a forest where it was like hidden somewhere, and they'd go and pick it up. And as soon as they picked it up, boom, police arrested, in prison. Bye-bye, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever. It's people got trapped a lot in that way. So don't do that either. Okay, comment from Anna. What I was trying to say is that check the laws of the country you're traveling to. There are some laws around the globe that may seem weird or unusual or unexpected. Be prepared. Totally agree with you, Anna. It's like when I always say to people who want tips about coming to Russia is it's the same as going to any country in many, many ways. There are some laws you won't agree with. There are some laws that will seem strange or alien. Some you might feel that are not just, that are laws that should not exist. But it doesn't matter. It's not your country. When you arrive, you follow those laws. Complain about them if you want, but follow them. That's it. It's the same as visiting any country. Russia is no different. So this is something that all these people who come to Russia, I'm sure they knew. Well, not all of them. Lots of them knew, especially people who've been living here and got arrested while they were living here rather than when they were crossing the border. They knew all this stuff. They decided that they could get away with it. Next thing. All right. Guys, don't think Westerners get special treatment. That's a very good message from Nikolai. The same service will get any Russian citizen or citizen from ex-USSR Asian Republic. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Westerners don't get special treatment. You know, this is from the law. Maybe you're going to go to a bar or a pub and someone will find out you're a Westerner and they'll buy you a drink and they'll want to hang out with you. You will get that special treatment. I've had it so many times when people say, oh, where you're from, let's hang out, blah, blah, blah. But at the border, no, there is no special treatment in that way. You have to follow the law. You can't say, I know some Americans feel this way. Hey, I'm an American citizen, let me go. They'll say stuff like, oh, you don't want there to be an international problem, whatever. They don't care. They don't care. Follow the laws, or you're going to be in trouble. All right. Another comment from Anna. Thank you so much for everyone who's commenting. It really helps the video. Yeah, there are different. Yeah, you're right, Anna. There are different rules around the world. Follow them. Yeah, the Assange situation was. I'm sure everyone followed that. Yeah, and this one you mentioned now about this situation in Dubai is insane. It's been all over British news. If anyone doesn't know it, I'll explain it very, very quickly. There's this 18-year-old boy. His girlfriend is 17. The age of consent in Dubai is 18. They had sex in Dubai. So officially, according to Dubai law, he was breaking the law. And as far as I understand, one of her parents sort of reported him for it, which was absolutely insane. But this is not something I could ever see happening in Russia. Actually, I'm sure it probably has. But this is like in a country like the UAE, they care a lot more about this kind of thing, I seem to believe. All right. So it's a nice short live stream. Thank you, people, for coming, commenting. I hope everyone who missed it, please watch the first 15 minutes. It's a video I recorded on this topic while I was in the center, freezing cold in the center of Moscow. You can see it. So when it was a cold day, I'm actually wearing a coat and gloves for once. And I explain what laws Americans tend to break, what not to do, and more importantly, I even give some case studies that are currently ongoing, people who are currently in prison in Russia, American citizens, and what laws they broke. If you're unsure about visiting, if you want to know what not to do, come go to the start of this video, watch it, and I'm sure that'll answer some of your questions. If you have any other questions about the law and situations with Westerners getting arrested here, please put them in the comments below. I'm sure many of you have noticed within like 24 hours after a video is uploaded onto YouTube, I try and reply to most of the comments. Of course, weeks down the line, I miss most of them, but straight away, if you comment, I will reply. So if you have any questions about the law here, your worries about being arrested, and I can give you the best tips and tricks that I have. So thank you so much for watching this. Like I said, I'm not in Russia right now. I'll be back in 2 days. There's another video coming this weekend. It's already uploaded. It's ready to go. I hope you'll all enjoy it. And I'll see you on another live stream, probably an IRL stream from the streets of Moscow next week. Bye. Thank you all.